Toxic people don't announce themselves with warnings. They sneak in disguised as fatigue that feels like friendship, favors that carry hidden strings, and urgency that pretends to be important. Their skill is corrosion disguised as care. They don't build, they just occupy. Tenants of attention who bend every space to serve their needs. Machiavelli wouldn't waste time exploring their feelings. He'd tell you to protect your boundaries. You don't change the toxic by explaining your heart. You make their tactics useless by setting boundaries that don't feed them. A city remains unconquered not because enemies change, but because its gates stay strong. A person stays unbroken, not because predators become kind, but because they find no grip. Your job is to quietly remove those grips, not with speeches, but with firm systems. Start with the discipline of seeing. Don't buy into the stories the toxic tell about themselves, that they misunderstood visionaries, that the world keeps failing them, or that you're the only one who truly gets them if only you'd make one more exception. Watch actions, not narratives. Patterns reveal the truth. Don't collect dramas and call them data. Notice what repeats, how requests only come after midnight, how gratitude shows up only under scrutiny, how deadlines turn into empty promises once eyes are off, and how compliments come loaded with bait. Toxic people are as predictable as rust. If you'd like it more formal, punchy, they overrun whatever is not sealed. You are not a judge issuing punishments. You are an engineer sealing seams. Study where you bend and call it mercy. Study where you bend and call it fear. Fear is the first currency they spend. When you can name your fear without dressing it as generosity, you retire a mint they were using. You begin by drafting borders like a surveyor with a steel tape and patience. Most are taught that kindness is softness, that generosity must be warm-blooded to be real. The toxic thrive on that confusion. They push where the line is fuzzy and declare your resistance unkind when it finally appears. Draw the line before the request arrives. Broadcast operating rules in quiet sentences. Requests come in writing. Decisions are batched. Deliverables are defined with a metric that decides the argument before the argument can metastasize. Replace will figure it out with "we will judge it by this baseline." Replace "sure I can jump on a call right now" with "the next window is Thursday at 3. Replace "I'll try" with "this is what I can do by Friday." The rest lands next week. Boundaries are not moral declarations. They are logistics. The toxic cannot litigate logistics without revealing their aim. Access without price. When the law of the house is simple and posted, the person who violates it tells you who they are. Believe them. Do not announce the belief. Adjust the access. After borders, stillness. Toxic people read weather better than sailors. They watch for clouds in your tone, for pressure systems in your cadence, for a draft of need blowing under your door. They sell umbrellas when no rain is forecast. Lower your emotional broadcast. Send fewer tells into the market. Replace apology with acknowledgments. Replace commentary with artifacts. Received. Reviewing Wednesday is a shield. Sorry, I'm overwhelmed. Is a billboard for predators who merchandise panic. This is not the ice of indifference. It is the insulation of governance. Your warmth does not belong in the channel the toxic can forward. Give warmth in rooms where it is not for sale. Give facts where leverage grows. Retire reflexes that use chat as therapy and meetings as confessionals. The toxic fish by sound. Go quiet. Your stillness will insult those who were trained to read your pulse to predict their next move. Let them be insulted. In a storm economy, calm is a tariff no smuggler can pay. Energy becomes currency. The toxic inflate attention like counterfeits and then spend it on your time. Correct the market or you will go broke. Scarcity is not ungenerous. Scarcity is honest accounting. Decide the price of you. Put costs on conversations, limits on favors, hours on your open door. Makers must be expensive to distraction, or they cannot afford to make anything. Announce your cadence and honor it. Announce your capacity and defend it. When an emergency appears, require a trade. What drops if this rises? Watch how many sirens die when the cost is counted, except that some will accuse your accounting of cruelty because cheap access felt like a birthright. They are used to extracting overtime from the conscientious. Revoke the subsidy. They call you selfish. You become sustainable. They call you calculating. You become predictable. They call you political. You become fair. The city runs on budgets, not wishes, so do humans who last. Pressure must be inverted. The toxic thrive when you defend yourself. They bait you into explaining the obvious as if the obvious were on trial. You do not argue. You transact in questions that reveal whether there is anything behind the smoke. Which contract clause, which file, what timestamp, what decision was reversed, and by whom? This moves the conversation from fog to rock. If the rock disappears, they were never arguing. They were fishing. If evidence appears, you follow its logic without heat or theater. Inversion also means redirecting stagecraft back to the stagehand. The person who whispers complaints in private is invited to share them in the room with the ledger open. The one who speaks of everyone is asked to name one. The one who prefers generalities is given a calendar. Gossip starves in public. Vague aggression starves in specifics. A manipulator who cannot survive with nouns is not a puzzle to solve. They are a hazard to mark and avoid. Clarity is a blade disguised as a mirror. You give tools that make ambiguity expensive templates, forms, baselines, definitions of done, shared dashboards. These are not bureaucratic ornaments. They are surgical instruments. With them, you slice open confusion and let it drain in daylight. The builders exhale because they have been swimming through fog. The toxic choke because fog is where they were living rentrée. Do not give gifts that require your custodianship. Give gifts that create standards without your presence. A request form that routes to a queue. A review checklist that runs without your wrists. A change log that erases I thought with dates. Often you will be accused of being rigid precisely when you make room for creativity. That accusation is camouflage for the loss of loopholes. Smile once, point back to the instrument. Clarity is generosity with a spine. Keep handing it out until chaos learns the price of entry. Tempo is your crown. Fake fires are the favorite weapon of manipulators. Because speed melts judgment. You train the room to feel your rhythm and to trust that quality arrives on your schedule. You do not outsource your pulse to other people's alarms. Publish turnarounds. Publish windows. Publish the day you go dark to make. Then keep your word like it is law. When genuine crisis lands, respond with a slice and a saturation point. Name what can be done in the next 3 hours and what cannot move until Friday without damaging 6 other promises. Theater collapses when set against arithmetic. Over time, your tempo becomes reputation. Reputation becomes permission. Even the loud learn to wait when waiting is repeatedly rewarded with excellent work. The toxic, denied the whip of immediacy, either learn to plan or leave to find a stage that rents them one. Both outcomes serve the work. Exits must be built while the road is still smooth. You do not draft the treaty while the arrows fly. Construct off-ramps in documents, in contracts, in norms. Define handoff steps, refund rules, termination protocols, data return mechanics, final invoices. Know how you will leave before you arrive. Then when the mask cracks, you do not argue with a face. You execute a clause. You do not write essays. You schedule a handover. Your words become short enough to fit on receipts. After the exit, practice the discipline of desserts. No post-mortem theater with people who tried to turn your house into a circus. No victory laps that waste the energy you just rescued. The silence will infuriate those who plan to feed on your outrage. You will be called cold. You will be called evasive. Take the call like a king who has already crossed the bridge that the critics are burning behind him. None of this works if you perform it like a play. The toxic are quick to sense costume. Your posture must be boringly consistent, reduce commentary, increase consequence, codify recurring answers, make decisions once, and point to the decision when asked again. If you need to write scripts for your mouth so your mouth stops writing checks, your calendar cannot cash. 1 line for time. I can review Thursday between 2 and 4. 1 line for money. That scope is outside budget. Here are the priced options. 1 line for respect. We discuss issues in writing with owners and dates. People will test you. People will map you. Become seagraphy they can rely on. The aggressive will eventually detour. The passive will learn to prepare. The competent will flourish because competence loves a paved road and a known speed limit. Drills anchor the laws. Tonight, draft 3 operating rules for your messages, meetings, and favors. Tomorrow, Send the rules to yourself and live them for a week without announcement. When someone pushes, do not sermonize. Point to the rule. If they object, ask for scope. If they stall, ask for a deadline. If they dramatize, lower your signal. If they flatter, redirect to the metric. If they threaten a clock, choose the slice you can ship and schedule the rest. If they gossip, ask if the subject has been told. If they say everyone, ask for one name. If they speak in generalities, move to writing. If they resist writing, end the conversation. You are not being rude. You are refusing to load another week with poison. Expect slippage. You will over-explain at 1 a.m. and awaken to a trap. You will answer a performance with empathy and feed the performance for a week. You will mistake a predator for a passenger, and then a passenger for a builder. Audit without shame. Once a week, look at your calendar and ask 5 questions. Where did I break my own tempo? Which boundary required an apology to enforce? What gift of clarity reduced noise? What inversion revealed truth? Which exit is overdue? Write answers, not paragraphs. Adjust policies, not speeches. People believe speeches for an hour. They obey policies for a year when you obey them first. Confusions to avoid. Opacity is not frost. It is warmth quarantined from leverage. Scarcity is not stinginess. It is survival math. Inversion is not sarcasm. It is a demand that claims become testable. Clarity is not micromanagement. It is weatherproofing. Tempo is not laziness. It is refusal to sell tomorrow's reputation for today's cheer. Exits are not hatred. They are sanitation. Remember that toxic players depend on your eagerness to prove that you are good. Do not audition in your own life. Set the ticket price and the theater rules. If they refuse to pay or refuse to sit, they are not your audience and you are not their show. There is body language for the quiet sovereign. Shoulders still, breath measured, eyes that move before your mouth does, hands that point to the metric, not to the villain. Silence that is long enough to outlast the urge to explain. You do not give speeches in rooms that sell panic wholesale. You make one decision and move the work forward. You do not pursue optics. You pursue artifacts, summaries, briefs, scopes, decisions, receipts. These are better soldiers than arguments. Arguments exhaust and then demand feasts. Artifacts keep marching. The toxic know this and will try to drag you back into sound and heat. Walk away into evidence. Evidence is the terrain where their tricks fail. Diagnostics sort recurring pain. If chaos keeps finding you, tighten your frame and cut side doors you forgot existed. If outrage keeps inviting you into duels, keep broadcasts low and reply with timestamps. If predictions about your moves keep leaking, replace your tells with decoys you can afford to give away. If takers swarm, stop offering personal rescues and convert your help into system assets. If your days feel like sprints stitched together, seize the calendar and stake quiet ground on it as if your life depended on it, because it does. If rumors multiply, complete an exit you already knew was due. People will say you have changed. Correct them gently. You have begun to govern. When the room turns against itself, steer light with intention. Praise precise behaviors out loud. The clear scope, the early delivery, the correction that included a fix. This reprograms the market price of attention. The insecure will bristle. They were counting on applause priced by volume. Do not remove the spotlight when they flail. Keep it pointed at the work. Over time, the quiet gain a currency that noise cannot counterfeit. Loyalty maps reveal themselves. The person who claps when a rival is praised does not plan to loot the bridge. The person who sulks when a teammate is rewarded is practicing taxation for later. Act accordingly. Move resources toward those who metabolize light into production. Practice micro moves until they become invisible musculature. Compose messages that can be forwarded to your future self without embarrassment. Replace haste with numbering. Replace ASAP with dates. Replace I feel with, according to the baseline, we are at X of Y. Swap slippery channels for ones that leave evidence. Shrink arenas. A vague complaint becomes a named deliverable for a named owner with a named due date. Split big promises into slices. and ship the smallest valuable slice instead of promising a banquet you cannot cook. The toxic want the banquet promise because it is a leash. Cut the leash with a delivered slice today. The toxic will call you rigid. They will say you are controlling, political, calculating. They will never say the part that matters, that your rules make theft unprofitable. They will not admit that before your walls they lived by faking fires and selling you water. They will suggest meetings about feelings, decline and send the template. They will ask for trust without a ledger. Decline and send the baseline. They will demand right now. Decline and send the window. This seems cold until you calculate the morgue of dead promises that warm people carried until they broke. Warmth without walls becomes flood. Floods drown. You are saving lives by being dull. The test of these laws is not what your enemies feel, but what your builders do. Watch their shoulders drop. Watch their output gain regularity, because interruption is no longer subsidized. Watch their morale stabilize because justice lives in the artifacts. The right people do not need constant applause. They need protection from weather that should never have been allowed indoors. Give them that climate. They will pay you in a currency that does not devalue. Delivered work, quiet loyalty, the absence of avoidable fires, the toxic feed on noise. Builders feed on oxygen. Open the windows and close the doors. What begins as self-P protection matures into culture. Visitors notice, requests are scoped, arguments are anchored, claims are testable, announcements have dates, praise is specific, exits are clean. People adapt because adaptation is cheaper than resistance when resistance gains nothing. Toxic players cannot farm here. They travel to fresher pastures where panic still sets prices. You do not need to banish them. You only need to ensure that your soil produces nothing they can eat. That is the agricultural version of statecraft. Alter the ecology until parasites cannot metabolize. You will be tempted to punish. Resist performance punishments. Distance instead. Silence instead. Schedule instead. Exit instead. Punishment feeds theater. Distance starves it. Consider the quiet cruelty of moving a battle from voice to artifact. Consider the mercy of a calendar that never lies. Consider the strength of a contract you are actually willing to use. Use it once and the story changes. You are no longer a person who can be shamed into generosity. You are a steward of resources who writes checks to the mission, not to dramas that refuse to die. Return to the foundation and measure. Boundaries held, count them. Broadcasts controlled, count them. Hours rescued by scarcity, count them. Baits avoided by inversion, count them. Noise eliminated by clarity, count it. Deadlines honored by tempo, count them. Exits completed without theater, count them. Counting is not soulless. It is how you tame fog. Machiavelli taught princes to track grain and horses. Track your focus with the same seriousness. The toxic gamble that you will forget. Do not forget. Remember with lists that do not blink when someone cries. In the presence of steady law, enemies grow bored. They cannot find your buttons. They receive no lightning in reply to their thunder. Their appetite sour. They audition elsewhere. You did not defeat them with speeches. You removed the stage. That is the cold mercy of governance. That is how you deal with the toxic without becoming toxic yourself. You become a field they cannot farm. Frame, signal, scarcity, inversion, clarity, tempo, exit. Each seed feeds the next. Plant them without labels, and the harvest will look like peace. When your day ends, close with a ritual that keeps the structure sacred. Review commitments you actually made, and those your mouth tried to make without permission. Resend the latter in writing. Reset the week's windows. Edit one template to make the next request easier. Archive one receipt. Archive one rumor by converting it into a paragraph in a private log that will never be forwarded. Turn off channels that train you to flinch. Set an alarm for your own thinking. You are not an endless emergency room. You are a steward of a province that builds. In the morning, act like a steward of a small country. Greet the calendar like a general reading a map. Assign resources without apology. Offer kindness that does not mortgage tomorrow. Spend attention where it multiplies. Answer with sentences that could be read in a courtroom without shame. Refuse to narrate your motives to people who have shown they will weaponize the narrative. Narration is a debt. Evidence is an asset. Carry more assets than debts. Carry more silence than alibis. Carry more rules than moods. What they leave behind will not feel like triumph. It will feel like clean hallways and air that stays one temperature. It will feel like a day that begins and ends inside the same mission. That is victory for people who build. That is how the cold laws pay their dividends. Not in drama, not in reputation fireworks, but in the soft, repeatable thud of delivery. The city runs, the orchards bear, the roads stay open. You do not need a monument. You need a working system that starves parasites and feeds work. If there is a single sentence to carry into rooms where toxicity tries to rent space, carry this. I enforce the design. You can be kind, you can be patient, you can be humorous, you can be generous and still enforce the design. A river does not apologize for its banks. The banks make the river possible. Without them, a flood. With them, power. You are not here to win every argument. You are here to end the need for them. Quietly, relentlessly with instruments instead of speeches. You make the arguments impossible because the artifacts decide. That is how a prince survives, surrounded by appetites. That is how a builder survives, surrounded by noise. The cold laws are not an attitude. They are logistics of dignity. They preserve the state, so the citizens of your work, your focus, your craft, your allies, can live without raids. They are not for impressing the court. They are for guarding the fields that feed the court. Bring them to bear without labels, without fanfare, and without apology. When the toxic arrive, they will find no purchase. When they leave, you will notice not their absence, but the presence of something they could never manufacture, order that remains. When you are elsewhere, you will be challenged by the familiar disguises, the apology that arrives with a new demand hidden behind it, the compliment that smuggles an obligation, the emergency that evaporates when asked to choose which other promise must be delayed to accommodate it. Treat each disguise like a test of your constitution. Ask for the noun that can be measured, the owner who can be named, the date that can be placed on a calendar. If the mask turns to smoke, log the event and move on. If substance appears, you do not call it hostility to ask it to become specific. You call it adulthood. The room grows up when specificity enters. You will notice who shrinks when the lights move from faces to facts. Build decoys you can afford. Let the non-essential become your public preference. So merchants of manipulation spend their pitches on a costume while your real appetite remains unmarketed. If they think you crave proximity, make seat location the thing they can optimize. If they think praise moves you, act grateful for quiet schedules instead. You are not lying about outcomes. You are misdirecting supply toward harmless fronts. The honest will still reach you. The dishonest will tire. Decoys are ethical when they protect the mission from those who trade in signals rather than substance. Calibrate your circle. Not everyone near you earns access to your interior. Admit people who respect artifacts over performance, who choose deadlines over drama, who correct in private and credit in public, who maintain tempo when eyes are elsewhere. Eject those who treat your clarity as a problem to solve. Eject those who interpret scarcity as insult. Eject those who only appear during triumph or crisis. Your allies should be boring in the best way, dependable, allergic to fog, untempted by gossip. With such people, you can afford to be generous because generosity becomes fuel rather than bait. When you must confront, strip theater from the room before the first word. Choose narrow topics. Write the purpose at the top of the page. Anchor on evidence. Ask for the smallest slice of agreement and stack slices without raising your voice. If the conversation swerves into biography, steer back to the ledger. If it escalates into accusation, ask for the timestamp. If heat rises, pause and move to writing. Grown adults can be returned to adulthood with a single sentence. Let's put this in writing so we can be precise. The toxic fear the document because the document does not bend to performance. Protect your mornings like a border. The first 90 minutes are a parliament for the state of your work. No visitors, no alarms, no fires accepted without proof. Draft frames update baselines. Decide the day's 3 cuts of value. Send one quiet message that sets a boundary for someone who needs reminding. Send one thanks that reinforces the market price of excellence. Then withdraw into making. By the time the city wakes, you are already under momentum that cannot be hijacked by noise. Teach your future by leaving artifacts that outlive your mood. The note you write to explain this week's refusal should be reusable next quarter. The template you publish should reduce 100 future asks. The checklist you refine should shorten 5 future meetings you never wanted. People call this cold. It is warmer than rescuing them nightly with your health. A system is a love letter written in advance to the person you will be when you are tired. If you are tempted to measure your power in followers or applause, remember that the toxic can counterfeit both in a day. Measure in the items they cannot fake: clean audits, predictable delivery, routes that remain quiet after you depart, teams that execute in your absence, calendars that obey rules instead of moods. Power is not what gathers around you when you are present. Power is what persists when you are elsewhere. Do not seek to be feared. Seek to be unreadable by predators and obvious to builders. The first accomplishes safety. The second accomplishes growth. How will you know you have become unreadable? Bait will come with less frequency, and when it comes, it will be crude. How will you know you are obvious to builders? They will bring you problems fully scoped and solutions tested to the first inch. They will arrive with checklists and leave with deadlines. That is the signature you are aiming for, an ecosystem that feeds on evidence instead of emotion. Keep your law steady.